Hi, I'm Crystal, and I'm here with a case study. Based on an original by Heather Hoffman, I want to see if I can recreate her design without going shopping. Her blog post with her affiliate shopping links are below if you would like the actual supplies, but I'll warn you they do run almost $60. Now, I don't have anything similar in my stash to what she used. The original calls for an arch die to make the opening for a shaker card and an embossing folder. So to recreate this arched opening in the front of the shaker, I'm going to use some circle dies, which I've had in my stash for a while, completely unused. This is why I don't need to go shopping. I have these unused craft supplies sitting around. But in order to make an arch, I'm just going to die cut the top of the circle with some partial die cutting, and then complete the shape with my paper trimmer. So partial die cutting is super easy. You just put down your die, make sure it's going to stay in place, and then the cutting plate is going to cover the parts you want to cut and not cover the parts you don't want to cut. So I'm putting the cover plate down to cover just half the circle, and where the cover plate stops, the cutting will stop. So I've got the top of the arch shape from this circle, which is a pretty basic shape. If you're a die cutter, I'm sure you've got that in your stash someplace. And then the paper trimmer is going to do the straight bits. So I'm just eyeballing the rest of the line for that arch. I probably could have done a better job if I'd used a ruler and a pencil, but I'm impatient, so I didn't. But just eyeballing, I think, did pretty good. So you can see where the blade is going to run, and I'm just connecting the bottom of that circle to the straight line at the bottom. Now my corners did not quite connect, but I've got scissors, so that is easily solved. And then we've got the arch for the front of the shaker. Now I tried to recreate the embossing folder by embossing over dies, by embossing over die cut shapes, and every attempt was very, very bad. So I'm just going to punt on using any type of embossing for the background. I've stamped the sailboat. I did have a sailboat stamp. And then I'm going to do the ink blending that Heather used on the original with a little bit of masking. So that's going to give me the look of that embossing folder without having any actual embossing. Since this is the background for the shaker, I think that's going to work out pretty well. You can compare my finished project to her original and see what you think. The embossing folder was actually not expensive. I believe it was the Simon Says Stamp embossing folder, and I think it was, I don't know, $10 or $15. That was not the costly part of the supplies for the original. I've just masked off with a little bit of Post-it note, and I'm just ink blending with some blue and teal and turquoise inks. So I've got a little bit of a cloud base, I've got the sailboat, I've got the water, and then I've got a similar smile sentiment. Now that I've put all the pieces together, you can see my stamped and ink blended background, my arched opening, and my smile sentiment with lots of clear sequins inside the card. I think that came out a reasonable facsimile of the original without buying any new supplies. So I will show her original again just to remind you what that looked like, as well as my end project. So I certainly enjoyed this process, and I thank you for joining me today.